Hello, my name is Rory. Today I'm going to be talking to you about the Society of Friends. The Society of Friends, or Quakers as most know them as, is a religious group whose ideals are formed around peace and equality. The Quakers originated in England in the mid-1600s under the leadership of George Fox. He wanted to form a group with people who were seeking religious freedom and who had similar beliefs as he did. He and his leaders sought out other seekers like themselves to help their movement. This group consisted of scattered Baptists, soldiers, and restless commoners. Although Fox started gathering this group in 1647, it took 6 years before the group was influential in the history of reform. Actually, in 1682, a well-known Quaker himself, William Penn, founded Pennsylvania to be a safe haven for Quakers to live and practice their faith without being hassled by the government or others like they were in England. Friends' beliefs were not the typical Christian beliefs. Friends' beliefs went against the majority of Christians in that era. Most Christians believed you needed a priest to pray to, you needed to pay tithes, or you needed to engage in deceitful practices in order to pray or speak to God. Quakers believed just the opposite. They believed that God could speak to the average person through his risen Son, Jesus Christ, and vice versa. In today's world, there are many varieties of friends. Some friends worship in silence, and some worship with a pastor similar to the Protestant. Some friends place most emphasis on the authority of Christian scripture, while other friends give authority to the immediate guidance of the Spirit. Even though there are a wide variety of friends with different beliefs in different branches, all friends can agree that outward statements of beliefs are an insufficient basis for a life of faith. There are many conflicts early on in the Society of Friends. Fox and many others were put in prison for disturbances or blasphemy. Fox spent 20 years of his life in and out of prison for standing up for his beliefs. Parliament made it quite difficult for Friends of Society. They began making a law that stated it would be illegal for anyone to refuse to take oath of allegiance to the king and country. People that did not take the oath were not permitted to hold meetings. Of course, Quakers did not believe in taking the oath because they believed their religion was superior to their country. Parliament named this law the Quaker Act of 1662. Another memorable conflict was when James Naylor, who was a prominent Quaker minister, went above and beyond the standard beliefs of the Quakers to make the point that the light of Christ was in everybody. Naylor took a group of men and women and rode into Bristol on horses shouting, "Holy, holy, holy," and throwing their clothes around to make this point. He and his followers were arrested for the disturbance. Observers believed that his followers and he thought Naylor to be Jesus Christ himself. Naylor was tried and convicted through Parliament and thrown in jail indefinitely. This was bad for the group's reputation and respectfully in the eyes of the Puritans. Because of what happened to Naylor, Fox and other leaders made an effort to increase authority in the group so this would not happen again. As time went on, things changed for Friends. Thanks to the Toleration Act of 1689, people in Great Britain were no longer considered criminals just for being friends. It was during the 18th century Quakers began to speak out against slavery. This was a difficult time for the Quakers within the group itself. The Quakers became a group that became somewhat divided. When the Quakers came to North America, 70% of them owned slaves and believed that being a slave owner did not go against Quaker beliefs, as long as you didn't mistreat them and taught them Christian values. However, John Woolman believed that human beings did not have the right to own other human beings. He felt it went against his Quaker beliefs of all men were created equal. He began to convince other Quakers of this, and in turn they became a driving force in the Underground Railroad. They started to help free as many slaves as possible. By the end of 1756, only 10% of Quakers owned slaves, and the Quakers had helped over 3,000 slaves escape to the Free State and Canada. Unfortunately, not all Quakers had the same beliefs as Woolman. They believed it went against their religion to lie when asked if they had slaves in their homes. It was illegal to help free slaves, and this went against Quaker belief of being a pacifist. This dividedness amongst the group itself caused some Quakers to form their own small, independent Quaker groups with Quakers who shared similar beliefs and views. During the 18th century, Quakers were not permitted to receive an academic degree of any kind. So many of them went into manufacturing or commerce. They became successful businessmen partly because people trusted them. Quakers were known to be honest and they took pride in their work. Therefore, their prices would be a fair one. Some useful items Quakers' businesses produced at this time were iron, steel, and pharmaceuticals. By the 19th century, Friends were eventually allowed to go to college and receive degrees. This provided us with a variety of scientists such as Thomas Young, who discovered how the lens in the eye worked and came up with a hypothesis about the perception of color; Maria Mitchell, who was an astronomer who discovered a comet; Joseph Lister, who promoted the use of sterile instruments based on Pasteur's work on germs; Thomas Hodgkin, who was the pathologist who made breakthroughs in anatomy and was the first doctor to describe a type of lymphoma that was named after him. Although Quakers were not permitted to participate in law and politics in the beginning, eventually, as time went on, some Quakers did decide to throw their hats in the ring. Joseph Peace was the first Quaker elected to Parliament, and Noah Haynes Swain was the only Quaker to serve on the United States Supreme Court. During this 20th century, the United States gained two presidents, Herbert Hoover and Richard Nixon. After reading and learning so much about the Society of Friends, aka the Quakers, one would almost have to agree that the Society of Friends have been an amazing attribute to this country and many others since they started their movement or religion. They stand up for what they believe in, they stand up for what's right, and they stand for peace and equality throughout mankind. Maybe if more people in this world could stand behind their beliefs and do the right thing, this world would be a much better